Hello everybody, my name is Dan Roberts and welcome to Real Talk. Today's guest is Austin Robson. He is the head of charity partners and he's been with the company for 3 years. Hello Austin and welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you doing? You fluffed me name.
I did. Hello everybody, my name is Dan Roberts and welcome to Real Talk. Today's guest is Austin Robson. He is the head of charity partners. He's been with Real for 3 years now. Austin, welcome to the show.
Hi Dan, glad to be here.
Oh, thank you for coming, man. I've been wanting to get you on for a while.
I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, how long have you been with Real now? 3 years in total?
I've been, I think it was 3 years last August, so it's just over 3 years now. So
you enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it seems as if it's flown by, but quite a long time.
Good. So, just for those that don't know, could you just explain what it is that your position is?
So I head up the partner channel subcontracting division. So I look after all the partners that we have in our real ecosystem. I help them develop and I help them grow. I'm involved in their invoicing. I'm involved in planning and all sorts of bits and pieces. So anything really contractual to do with the partners, I'm aided and abetted by a huge team of people at Real. And then another part of my role, of course, is business development. So I'm constantly looking for new and exciting partners to enrich the real ecosystem. So it's really a twofold role: looking for new partners and looking after the partners that we've got currently. So it makes for very interesting work, and I love the job.
Good. What did you do beforehand? I mean, I don't think I need to ask you where you're from. I think we can all work that out.
Is the guy behind the camera going to be able to put some subtitles on this at some point?
I can put subtitles on for it as well. Don't worry about that. But so, what did you do beforehand? I mean, it's strange because a lot of us do things that are completely not related to what we end up doing as regards charity work. So me, for example, I've done security work. I've even put stickers on Basil Brush in a factory.
Yeah.
I did say this on Kristen's podcast. So what about yourself? Where did you...
My career is wide and varied. I mean, I started many years ago making soap powder and making bars of soap and doing bits and pieces like that. So I worked in laundry and cleaning as an analyst chemist, and then I moved into packaging. So I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Packaging, and I work in cosmetics and fragrances, so doing aftershaves and perfumes for big global launches. So that was kind of exciting. Probably about 20 years ago, I sort of fell into a more salesy type of role. So there was the technical aspect of my job, and then I was a technical buyer, and then I just sort of morphed into more sort of salesy and then people-focused things. So people facing. For the last 8 years prior to coming to Real, I worked in gas and power, and I sold gas and power contracts to business to business. But I was always involved in partner channels, partner subcontracting channels, and I headed up that division for 6 years. So when it came to move 3 years ago, I didn't have any charity experience at all, which is kind of daunting at my time of life. And I had a long conversation with Tom, and Tom convinced me, and I convinced myself that, I could probably get my transferable skills in heading up partner channels and subcontracting divisions and do it within the charity arena. And I say this to people many times. It was a real bold step at that time in my life. I was over 50, and to go into an area of work that I had no contacts with at all. But it was almost like I had a bit of an epiphany or a midlife crisis, more likely, where I just decided, what is it that I'm going to be, remembered for? And, you all died in the world charity fundraising. I want to be that person as well. I want people to look back on my career and say, Austin did some great stuff for charity. And I tell all the partners, and again, it's a little bit of a sort of hackneyed story, but we should never really lose sight of, what our product is. I've been involved in businesses where I was driving up and down the motorway and selling bits and pieces out of the back of the car. What we're doing here is much more valuable, although not touchy-feely. The impact that we're making. And I looked at Tom's podcast, and I looked at your face when you saw that impact award and all those numbers behind that pound coin sign, and I thought, this is terrific. This is really good.
Wasn't expecting that at all.
No.
It really caught me off guard. I'm not very... Don't get me wrong, I love praise. In fact, anyone that knows me knows I praise myself a lot. But when it comes from somebody else and I'm not expecting it,
Yeah.
it blows me out and I didn't know what to do. But
Yeah.
like that's hung up now in my. I literally went home. First thing I did, I've hung it up on my wall in my living room where I can see it as well.
It's great.
I was going to bring it on here as a regular thing, but I don't know where I don't think I'm allowed to put nails in this wall because it's not my podcast room. But it's when you said before about the gas and electric thing. What was that? Was that in an office or?
I was working in an office. It was a large call centre. But my job primarily was to look at other organisations who had networks of clients. And then they used to use our price books and we used to contract through us and sell gas and power to their networks of clients. So it was a partnership like that. So it has similarities with what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But I think the main part of that partner subcontracting thing that I really liked is getting face to face with your partners, looking at their businesses and trying to understand what they're all about. And if I think about the community of partners that we have here at REAL, it's so wide and varied. Everybody's got different likes and dislikes. So it makes for a very interesting job. And I love them all dearly. I say this all the time, but all the partners are great. They all almost feel like my children. I feel like a little bit of a fatherly figure towards them. Albeit that they're hugely talented in their own right. Much more experienced.
Am I your favourite?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're only saying that because you're on here, aren't you?
Well, I'll get that £20 off you later on, yeah?
Yeah, you will do, yeah. Also, for people watching, I'd just like to say that I'm privileged to have Austin on because you might not know this, but Austin is a massive wrestling fan.
I'm not a massive wrestling
Yes,
fan.
you are. You came with me and JP and we went to the O2, wasn't it? And we watched the wrestling and I saw you. You were like going, oh, it's not really for me. But when Drew McIntyre pinned, who was it? It pinned Damian Priest. You went, yes, like that. So I saw you do it, man. And we had such a good time. And it was just nice to let your hair down. And
we had a great night.
We did, yeah, it was good. I mean, you'll be pleased to know that the new WWE champion is actually John Cena. Just in case you missed that.
Does that make any difference to me?
It makes a big difference. If you
Nobody talks about Stone Cold Steve Austin anymore. My namesake.
Actually, he turned up the other day at WrestleMania and he was riding like a quad bike and he turned and he rammed into the barricade and took out like 5 people. They're all right. They're okay. Like the guy that owns it turned up with his checkbook and just sorted it all out there and then.
Maybe time to swap the quad bike for a mobility scooter then.
Yeah, he's pushing 60 now, bless him. But yeah, I mean, I'm really glad you came on, man. I mean, we talk a lot on the phone. I've only actually probably seen you when we went to wrestling and at the gala. The gala was fun as well.
Gala was great.
And it was nice to see everybody dressed up. We all scrub up all right, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially yourself. You look great, man.
I was just relieved that I could still get into the suit because I'd had it for 5 years and I hadn't worn it for 5 years. And there was that awkward moment where I got it out of the wardrobe and I thought, am I going to be able to fasten this? So fortunately, I'm just as fat now as I was 5 years ago, but I haven't got it.
Well, that's good, that's consistency, Austin. You're doing very well. So what's the plans for the future, man? I mean, right now, obviously, the position that you've got now and the responsibilities that you've got, is there anything you've got planned for the future? If you don't want to go into it, that's fine, but is it something that you want to talk about?
I think part of my job, and probably the most interesting job, is looking at the strategy. I mean, I think it's really difficult, or it's really easy to fall in the trap of just getting sucked into the day-to-day business, and dealing on the telephone and on Slack messages, and dealing with the immediacy of the business. It's very like that. We can be very reactive on occasions, but with the help of the directors, I'm being encouraged more to take a step back and do some longer-term planning. So there are loads of things in the pipeline for the future. I'm looking at all aspects of the business, and my primary focus when I'm looking at the business is how can I make it better and how can I make it easier for you guys to grow and develop within our ecosystem, and how do I make it a really attractive proposition to bring in new partners, because there are lots and lots of new partners out there, and I'd love to get them in there as well as the regular faces. But I think for the future, what I'd really like to do. And you made the point there, you've probably only seen me face-to-face twice.
Yeah.
And that's just as a consequence of we've got a lot of partners, but also the geography. I live 300 miles away from most of you guys. But I'd just like to we talk a lot about the real family, but I'd like to get us all together, whether that be a social thing. I'm going to start a monthly Zoom meeting where I'm going to invite partner directors to come on, and we're going to have guest speakers. I think Liam's going to talk something, JD's going to talk. And just, lend some experience. But I think in the fullness of time, I'd like people like yourself to come on and say, right, I've got something to talk about this week. Because I think sometimes we're all guilty of, working in isolation, in little silos. and we may be coming up with problems or issues in our working lives that somebody else has solved already. So by just getting together and having a natter and sharing experiences and maybe just letting off a little bit of steam, we'll get that sense of community back. You know, we're all great at Zoom meetings now, you know, and I do love a Zoom meeting, and, you know, it's a really effective tool, but there's nothing for me still, and I may be old-fashioned, beats, you know, looking somebody in the whites of their eyes and pressing the flesh and getting to know people and going to wrestling matches.
Yes, exactly. More of them have got to be on the card for the future. But,
sure, anytime you like.
One thing I will say, I'm just touching on what you said there. One of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast was because when I first joined Real, it was a select amount of people that all worked with each other at different times. And we all met up, and there was, I can't put a number on how many of there was, but it was big enough for us to know most people that are working there and reach out and speak to them and stuff like that. But the thing with nowadays with the subcontracting thing, as great as it is to bring in more money for the charities that we represent, we are, like you said, we're kind of away from each other. We don't really, not everybody knows each other anymore.
No.
And as much as Real is a family, it's also got extended family as well. And the whole point of the podcast is bring as many people on so everybody knows who everyone is, everybody knows the name, and everyone knows a bit about somebody. Just by doing that, it's because there's things, I've brought people on here and spoken to them before, and they've told me things that I didn't know about. Kristen's a good example. He told me, I can't remember what it was now, but he told me something I didn't know, and I've known Kristen for like 8 years. And same with JP. JP told me that he was singing opera. I didn't know that, and he was I didn't know that he could sing. And I think these are things that, just these little personal things of the connection between all of us, because that's what we do for a living. We create connections with people and educate them on charities and ask people for help. That's the bottom line of what we do. We need to start doing that more with the people under the Real umbrella as well. And this is the whole purpose of this. And what you're saying as well is going to be brilliant, because we can get together, we can speak to each other, we can spitball with ideas and stuff. So with the position that you've got, it's a lot of responsibility. And you've got a lot to do. You're a man, a very busy man. And I'll always like to ask people this question, because you may do something that somebody else doesn't and they can learn from that. But what do you do to manage your stress levels when it comes to things like this?
How do I manage my stress levels?
Yeah.
If you talk to my wife, she'd say not very well.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, I do. I do exhibit signs of stress sometimes, and I think it's just because I take the job very seriously. I'm very keen. And this is, I'm going to paraphrase this, to put the fun back into fundraising. I think sometimes I take it a little bit too seriously. We're doing a great job. We're all working really hard, and we're getting some tremendous results. I think we need to sort of, me in particular, lighten up. So I think sometimes stress can be of your own volition. You know, sometimes I put myself in the way that I'm working is a little bit scattergun, so I end up in stressful situations. I think if you get more measured and more controlled, and I think if you take a step back from the business and start putting some long-term plans in and some long-term processes, and, you know, as things grow and develop, it doesn't need to be more stressful. It can actually get less stressful, you know, as you get better and more cognizant with the role that you're doing. But I guess to relax, I've got a large family. I've got grown-up children. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 grandchildren now, which is just an absolute joy. You know, it's really great seeing a new generation of people coming onto the earth, and, you know, you can see, you know, little glints in their eye which reminded you of your son or your daughter, and then, you know, seeing your children as parents and as adults is quite a big step. So I spend lots of time with the grandchildren. That can be relaxing and stressful in equal measure. In equal measure. Not a lot of people know this, but I'm football mad. Love watching Newcastle United, but I'm also a qualified FA football coach.
Okay.
And for many, many years, I was a grassroots football coach, and I did that from young kids up to 5, right up until 18, 19 adult. And I also was one of the pioneers for a girls' football team. And I had the girls' football team up until they were 16, which was hugely rewarding. And I'm still involved very much in my local club. So that's what I do to relax, and
Good on you,
love
man.
to do stuff like that.
It's like when you were saying earlier about I don't have any children, but I've got 2 brothers, and that was like having kids, because there's like 10 years between me and Tom, 5 between me and Jason, and I try and look after them the best I can. Tom's doing so well for himself now. Jason's getting there as well. He's got his demons, but he's fighting them. That's the main thing. But they've got kids. Tom's got 2, Jason's got 1. And I'm the cool Uncle Dan. And they think I'm rich because I don't see him that often. So when I do, I spoil him.
Nice.
And like Elijah is one of the most, this is Tom's kid, one of the most loving, adorable. He's like a puppy.
Yeah.
And then you've got the newborn Leo. I think he's like 1 or 2. I think he's 2 now. I'm not very good at ages, but like he's about that big. And he's a lot like me.
Yeah.
And then there's Jack, that's just some kind of, he's either going to grow up to be like, he's going to do something great. He's either going to grow up to be like a world leader, or
I've seen that side of you before.
yeah. I love my nephews, and they love me. And there's like loads of, I'm going to put a picture up as well, actually, of me and like 2 of my nephews. But like I love them to bits. And like Jack's middle name is Daniel. I think it's because they wanted to name after the whiskey rather than me, but still. You know, because that was a big part of my life. Good old Jack Daniels, but I've quit drinking now. Last time I drank was at the gala.
Good for you.
You realise once you've had a bit of time off it that how bad it makes you feel. Because if you drink on a regular basis, I'm not talking like every night, but if you drink on a regular basis, you don't realise how bad you feel until you've stopped for a while. Yeah, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, Austin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, man.
Is that it? Is that time up?
That's time up, man. Unless you want to talk about something else.
No, not wrestling.
Not wrestling?
Not wrestling.
No. But thank you for coming on. And you are definitely going to come on again, because I've really enjoyed this. And I think it'd be good to touch base once you've got these things in place that you spoke about as regards meeting up on a monthly basis.
No pressure. So I've actually got to deliver on those things.
You've got to deliver on those things, yeah. But I'll tell you what, you can move your microphone out of the way and you can have one of these. And thank you very much, Austin. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's been great.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. My name is Dan Roberts. This is Real Talk. So, with respect, ethics, activism, and love, take care, and I'll see you next time.